What is up, guys? It is Quinn here, and in this video, I'm going to be going through my top 36 wide receiver rankings for week 10 of the NFL season. If you guys enjoy the content, do me a huge favor, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and if you guys have any fantasy questions, you can drop those down below, and I will be getting back to every single person. If you guys are interested in signing up for Underdog Fantasy, they have, some super fun weekly drafts. They also have player pick'ems for every game. They have a ton of lines up for the Thursday night game, and the one that I'm looking at for this matchup is the over/under half a rushing and receiving touchdown for Cordarrelle Patterson. For me, I'm looking at the over or the higher on that one. Patterson scored a rushing touchdown or a overall touchdown in 4 of the 5 games so far this season. He also saw 80% of the Falcons' goal line snaps in his return in week 9. Even though he didn't have his full workload, he was still getting the goal line opportunities. And then we have the Panthers defense, who have allowed 13 touchdowns to the running back position, tied for the most in the NFL. So that's a pick that I like. You guys can go through, look at all of those. If you use the link in the description or code Quinn, they will double your first deposit up to $100. But now jumping into the wide receiver rankings, per usual, we have this top 4 of Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, and Stephon Diggs. And then we've got Devontae Adams just outside of those guys. Then at number 6, I have Jalen Waddle. This Dolphins passing attack has just been basically unstoppable when Tua is the starting quarterback. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, just every single game giving you top production. So I think it's fair to have Waddle up here at number 6. Also, I'm not sure if you guys can hear the rain coming down. It is raining pretty hard outside. Hopefully it's not a distraction. But keeping it going here at number 7, A.J. Brown going up against the Commanders. Just a super strong, week-to-week mid-tier wide receiver 1. I have Amon-Ra St. Brown here against the Bears at number 8. As you guys know, I'm very, very high on Amon-Ra. I think this is a great matchup against the Bears. We just saw Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle absolutely shred them. I think Amon-Ra is due for a big breakout after, back-to-back slower games, even though he has been healthy. At number 9, I have DeAndre Hopkins going up against the Rams. I guess he had, his worst game of the season so far. Still, scored a touchdown, was giving you decent points, but he was just so dominant through 2 weeks. I still think he's going to be, a top 12 wide receiver moving forward up until Marquise Brown comes back. Then at 10, I have CeeDee Lamb going up against the Packers. I feel like there's this kind of big tier here, probably starting with CeeDee Lamb. He hasn't had one of these huge, crazy breakout games since Dak has been back, but I do think some of those big performances are going to be coming soon. At number 11, I have Mike Evans. I think we could have gone with a few different players here. Honestly, probably 5 or 6 different options here at number 11. I do think this is a large tier. I ended up going with Mike. Maybe we see a Bucs offense rebound. Not exactly anticipating it, but I still think Mike Evans can give you, fringe wide receiver 1 production, even if the Bucs offense doesn't look good. At 12, I have Chris Olave, a fantastic matchup against the Steelers. We know Mike Thomas is likely going to be out for the season, or I think he's locked in out for the season. So Chris Olave is the clear-cut number 1, for the foreseeable future, and I think he's a top 12 play this week. At 13, I have Deebo Samuel. I could have seen Deebo, being ranked a few slots lower. I think this is a solid matchup here against the Chargers. He should be fully healthy coming off of the bye week, so I do think he'll kind of remind people why he is the wide receiver 1 on this team. Then back-to-back, I have Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. It seems like week for week, these guys just continue to match their production. I think both of them are high-end wide receiver 2s going up against the Buccaneers. At 16, I have Amari Cooper. He's just been super productive even without Deshaun Watson in the lineup. I think, with Brissett at quarterback, he's a mid to high-end wide receiver 2. Once we get Deshaun Watson in there, we could really be seeing top 10, maybe even top 5 if he gets good touchdown luck rest of season once Watson is back. At 17, I have Christian Kirk. Just continues to give you solid wide receiver 2 production as Trevor Lawrence's number 1 option. Also is a pretty solid matchup here against the Chiefs. The Jaguars are likely going to have to keep up, likely going to be, a decent amount of passing volume in this one. And then in that same matchup, I have Juju Smith-Schuster, who after a slow start has really settled in and just been on a tear. Even though this is a pretty crowded wide receiver room, I feel like Juju has established himself as the clear-cut number 1 wideout, and I think he'll continue to give you strong production. At 19, I have Chris Godwin. It has taken a little longer for Chris Godwin to get going as I originally thought. Also, I think a lot of that is due to the overall offensive struggles. So he is going to be more of a mid, probably to back end wide receiver too, but I still think he could see a breakout later on in the season. Remember, he is coming off the ACL, so it was always going to be, more of a second half of the season bet on Chris Godwin. At number 20, I have Joshua Palmer. This is going to be assuming that Keenan Allen and Mike Williams both do not play. If, like Keenan plays and Williams is out, then Palmer would probably drop to like high-end wide receiver 3 territory. But if both of those guys are out, I think he proved that he is a very capable NFL wide receiver and is going to command a lot of targets. At 21, I have Allen Lazard going up against the Cowboys, someone who I've admitted to being wrong on this season. He just continues to produce. He's really like the only strong pass catcher on this team aside from Aaron Jones, so I do think he is a very solid wide receiver too. At 22, I have Terry McLaurin. Love McLaurin when Taylor Heineke is throwing the ball. Tough matchup here against the Eagles, but I still think he'll get his opportunities, to make some big plays, get into the end zone. At 23, I have Deontay Johnson. Probably going to be much higher on Deontay than consensus. Once again, I'm going to, be buying back in. I think the Chase Claypool trade does help out Deontay. Just going to, make this offense probably a little bit more saturated between Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, and Pat Freiermuth. He's still commanding a ton of targets. Eventually, it just has to translate to points, so I will continue to buy in on Deontay Johnson, but I understand if some of you guys aren't as high on him as I am right now. Then at 24, I have Brandon Ayuk. These past few weeks, before the bye, he has been incredibly impressive. I think he's definitely going to be a fringe top 24 guy rest of season. We'll see how he does with a, fully healthy Debo, but I still think he's going to be a good play this week. Then at 25, I have DJ Moore going up against the Falcons. I definitely think, the quarterback uncertainty isn't great for him. If we knew that PJ Walker was locked in rest of season, I'd probably be much higher, but it's always possible they switch to, Baker Mayfield. I feel like Baker is probably just the worst overall option here. I feel like Walker and Darnold are probably pretty interchangeable. They're going to feed DJ Moore. For whatever reason, it just hasn't clicked with Baker. So we have PJ Walker starting. We'll see if that sticks. So Moore is, just outside the wide receiver 2s. At wide receiver 26, I have Michael Pittman. And Pittman is a really tough guy to rank because we know the talent is there, and I still think he can give you decent production on a bad offense. It really just comes down to how atrocious is the Colts offense going to look. So maybe I'm honestly a little high on him here, having him as a high-end wide receiver 3. It is just tough to rank someone so talented, as like a mid-tier wide receiver 3 option. But I guess we've had to do it so far this season with a guy like DJ Moore. So maybe, I'll adjust later on in the week. But right now I'm going to slot him in here. I really just have no idea what to expect out of this Colts offense. With Saturday coming in, you've got just a wild press conference, just a lot going on there with the Colts. At 27, I have Gabe Davis. I'm sure a lot of you guys who roster Gabe Davis are probably not going to want him in your lineups this week, and I understand. I definitely think the Josh Allen injury could, factor in pretty heavily here. If Josh Allen is out, like Gabe Davis is unstartable in my opinion. This is definitely a situation where Josh Allen is playing and still going to be, 80 to 90% of Josh Allen. At 28, I have Rondale Moore, just very, consistent usage since he's been back from injury, operating as the wide receiver 2 behind Marquise Brown and then behind DeAndre Hopkins. So I like him here as a mid-tier wide receiver 3. 29, I have Devonta Smith. He has a pretty low weekly floor. He can give you some boom games. So I think this is probably, the appropriate spot for him here. Then back-to-back Broncos wide receivers. I have Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton here going up against the Titans. I truly have no idea what to do with these Broncos wide receivers. Early on, it looked like Sutton was pulling away as the number 1. Then Sutton was just miserable like the last 3 weeks. Jerry Jeudy had really picked it up. So I have Jeudy slightly ahead. They're coming off the bye week. We have no idea what to expect out of the Broncos. I feel like no one can probably give you a super confident answer on what this offense is going to look like. So they're both going to slot in as mid-tier wide receiver 3s. I mentioned George Pickens when I talked about Deontay. I feel like Pickens is a big, big winner of the Chase Claypool move. I feel like he's going to step into the clear-cut wide receiver 2 role. They obviously felt like he was capable enough to, be in that position. So I do like Pickens moving forward, and is probably someone who you can buy very low on. I feel like there hasn't been a ton of hype on him, even though I do think he gets a big boost from Claypool leaving. 33, I have Curtis Samuel. Samuel has definitely taken a little bit of a step back with Taylor Heineke at the quarterback position. Prior to Heineke there, we had Curtis Samuel basically outproducing Terry McLaurin pretty consistently. That is no longer the case. He doesn't have the volume, and he typically doesn't have the big play upside, barring a ref just absolutely trucking the Viking safety. So he's more of a mid to back end wide receiver 3. Then at 34, I have Adam Thielen. Just a pretty, I feel like, bland play here, a slightly desperate flex. Wide receiver 3 option. Hasn't been crazy impressive so far, but still someone who's in that top 36 range. Then I have Darnell Mooney here at 35. Really kind of, come on the last few weeks. I think last 5 weeks he's been over 50 yards or somewhere in that area. As Justin Fields continues to look better and better, Mooney is going to continue to be a solid option. And I do think this is a good matchup against the Lions here. So if he does kind of have a breakout game here, maybe he is a guy who's sliding in as a mid-tier wide receiver 3 rest of season. The concern is always just the lack of overall passing volume, because Fields can look amazing, rushing for 100-something yards, throwing it 20 times. But in terms of, having to rely on that volume, you can have a great target share and still be sitting at 6-7 targets, which isn't necessarily going to translate to top fantasy production. And then to wrap up the top 36, Mecole Hardman, who has been, on a hot streak the last 4 games, I believe. So I do think he's a, back-end wide receiver 3 play. And then one guy left off, Brandon Cooks. Just couldn't really fit him in here. He belongs somewhere in that tier of guys I was talking about at the end. But that is going to wrap it up for this one. Honestly, hopefully the audio is fine for this. It's raining pretty heavy outside, and I have no idea if this is even going to work. So hopefully you are listening to this right now. If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. The running back rankings are already up. So thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.